Coach Angelina, what you got? Do crunches even have a purpose or not effective? Better to do just planks and glute pelvis focused core training or things like dead bugs? Why was the focus on 500 crunches, etc. ever a thing? I am actually a pretty big fan of sit-ups and things of that nature, and I have to give credit to Daddy-O Pops Bill Hartman for really challenging me on this, because I think definitely early on in my career I was very anti-core, like sit-ups and crunches and things of that nature, and I think some of that probably went through the McGill research. But again, I actually did a debrief a while back on is spinal flexion bad. When you deep dive into the research, there's a lot of good stuff in vitro that maybe shows flexion could be bad, but then when you apply it to human beings, it doesn't seem to hold water. There's probably a deep inside joke in there. So is sit-ups and all that bad? No. Definitely check out. I'll link that in the show notes, because it's I think a very good debrief that really looks at the evidence. So I don't think crunches are inherently bad. Are there some people who it's better for than others? Yes. It's not something I would give someone in the beginning, at least a crunch or a full sit-up. And the reason why that is because the common compensation people will do. Two things. One, if you have someone who has a big rib flare or even a wide infrasternal angle where they have a ton of eccentric bias on the front side of their body, it can be really hard to perform a crunch effectively. And so what they may do is, well, they might not be able to get up into that position, or you might see them just bend at the sternum, which then juts the head forward, and then you get too much rectus damn near cutis abdominis, you get a lower pooch belly, and you're probably not training the abs the way you want. So a lot of times when I'm coaching someone through a crunch progression, I like to start from the bottom like your favorite Drake song and do a lot of reverse crunches. Eventually, once we've got good segmental motion of the spine, how would you know that? Squat looks really good. They're getting good posterior movement. You might see external rotation-based measures improve. Then I totally think doing some type of sit-up activity can be quite effective. In fact, I think they're pretty solid to get posterior expansion in the later phases of things. And folks, you know, people poo-poo sit-ups for a long period of time, but what do you think a Turkish get-up is? It's a single-sided sit-up. So why would a bilateral one be a bad choice? Probably not the case. Now, if we're talking about EMG activity of abs, say you want abdominal hypertrophy, I need to double check the most up-to-date research, but I remember, I think it was in JOSPT, I remember reading about this several years ago, where they looked at EMG activity. Now, you know, EMG has its limits for sure, but it's probably useful when we're talking about hypertrophy training. But they compared a lot of different tasks like sit-ups, crunches, ab wheel rollouts, jackknives and Swiss ball planks, or not planks, but pikes. And your sit-ups and crunches don't activate the abs as much in comparison to something like an ab wheel or a Swiss ball pike or jackknife. They do increase hip flexor activity a bit more. And folks, the hip flexors aren't these demonized muscles that we just like need to cut out of our lives, because we do flex the hips. So it's probably not a bad thing to train those things, assuming you have adequate movement options. In some cases, it might be warranted to do so. That's kind of where I'm at with sit-ups and crunches. For the right people, if you got someone who can exhale, they can concentrically orient the front side of their body, they can get the lower abs to drop, some of the stacking components that we talked about previously, Coach Angelina, I think they are totally within the wheelhouse of something to do. And they are pretty safe. Again, check out the Is Spinal Flexion Bad debrief that I will link in the show notes. Awesome question.